So I'm going to be discussing the mechanics in order of hardest to easiest. I'm going to be discussing stuff like the bhop and strafing first, and then I'm going to get into things like VouZous and Slither Chains. Okay, so the first movement tech I'm going to be discussing is bhopping, right? If you come from source games, if you come from CS, if you come from Gmod, this is going to be a lot different, right? Because in those games you gain momentum, you strafe, you gain momentum, accelerate. But in Battlefield, bhopping is just a way to keep on jumping forward without losing your momentum. So you'll see if I start jumping forward holding W, I can't jump much further, right? I'm stuck going at a slow pace. The way to stop this is actually jump and let go of all movement keys, right? Jump, let go of all movement keys, jump again. You see on the keyboard overlay, let go, jump, let go. And you'll know you're doing it right if when you land, you slide a little like this. A little slide, right? Once you get that down, you can start adding a crouch to the end of it. So jump, crouch, and you slide. And this just makes you a little harder to hit in the air. Okay, next up is strafing, right? And strafing in Battlefield, again, is a lot different than in source games. You don't gain any momentum strafing in Battlefield. It's just a way to juke bullets, right? It's just a way to juke people out. Unlike source games, you don't let go of W here. So if I want to strafe to the left, I will jump forward and turn my mouse to the left. If I want to strafe right, jump, turn my mouse to the right. Once you get better at that, you can start adding a D press. It just lets you strafe a little sharper. You can press W and A to strafe left, or W and D to strafe right. And again, just like the bhop, you're letting go of all movement keys before you land, so you can not lose much momentum.
I've been thinking and what was brother?
So the next mechanic is steady aim, right? So if I jump, I ADS, you see my crosshair bops down a lot, right? It's hard to shoot people like that. You don't really know where your crosshair is. The way to stop this, it seems tricky, but it's really easy to get the hang of this. In the air, you want to switch weapons, crouch, and scope in, and you see that my crosshair doesn't bob, right? It's just straight, right? Opposed to bobbing like this. If you find switching weapons to be kind of hard or just tedious like I do, you can make a bind. This bind's really useful. It's good for other mechanics as well later on. On foot, keyboard, or key bindings on foot, and right here, toggle primary weapon. You can have this set to mouse or keyboard, doesn't really matter. I have it set to my mouse. But you can double click it. Click it once, brings out your secondary, bring it once, brings out your primary. Double click it, jump, scope in, and it's a lot easier than pressing my num keys. So I just use this bind instead. Sometimes it glitches out like that, but yeah, it's handy, it's really handy. Okay, the next movement mechanic is called the ZouZou, right? And this is a Battlefield classic. It basically it's a way of peeking to where your hitbox glitches into the ground for a few frames from the enemy's POV, but you're not actually in the ground. You can shoot them and everything. So what you need to do it is you need a solid wall, kind of like this. Solid wall you can't destroy with C4 RPGs or anything, and you need to jump and at your apex scope in or ADS and look at where you want to shoot, I guess, right? That's it. On the enemy's POV, I'll show a POV. It looks like you are actually glitching into the ground for a few frames. So it's a really good like information peek. You can get a few kills out of this if you're quick with it. But yeah, you're basically unhittable, almost unhittable when you do this correctly. So the next mechanic is called the RouZou, right? Kind of looks like this. It's a very flashy move. I'll show you how to do it. So you need to key bindings on foot, and you need to bind this. Crouch, toggle, / prone hold. You can have it set to keyboard or mouse, doesn't really matter. I have it set to keyboard. And basically the way I like to practice is just put your back against a wall, and whatever key you bound to crouch, toggle, prone, I bound it to E. Press that and jump at the same time. So for me, I'm going to press space and E, and you should get launched forward, right? So looks like that. Once you get better at that, you can start kind of doing it like this, flicking away from a wall, running against a wall, and flicking away, because it's basically just getting your legs stuck in the wall and the game pushes you out, but that in turn gives you a lot of momentum. So something I forgot to mention in regards to the RouZou is doing it along curved walls will get you a lot more speed than doing it against just a flat wall. It's right there. This is 120 hertz, by the way. Flat wall and curved wall. Okay, now on to some more intermediate movement techs. We have the MouZou or the Slither. People call it different things, but it basically looks like this, right? So to get the Slither, basically you have to, when you switch weapons, your hands go off screen for a second, right? See, hands go off screen. You want to switch weapons, so your hands go off screen and vault over something. You should do this kind of tripping animation, right? Just like with steady aim, it's a lot easier if you bind, where is it? If you bind toggle primary weapon to something, right? Once you get that, you can start adding a flick to the end of it, and that should send you flying most of the time. With this mechanic though, you do have to know that the server tick rate does affect how far you go, how powerful your Slither is. For example, I'm on a 144 Hz server right now, so I am getting very powerful MouZous. But if you're playing on a 30 Hz server, you're going to be getting very weak MouZous or Slithers, right? So you got to take that into account. Okay, the next movement tech is the VouZou, right? And that basically involves throwing a med pack at the ground and vaulting over it, sort of like that. And this gives the same glitched animation as the MouZou, right? So on the enemy's POV, you're going to be kind of teleporting and glitching when you're in this animation, which is going to make it very hard for them to hit you, right? So again, this is a really hard mechanic, even I struggle with it. So throw the med pack near your feet, and you kind of have to time a jump right before it hits the ground. That's what I found works. Again, it's not very easy. People can get it consistently, but not me. Yeah, that's it right there. Finding the angle for the med pack takes some time. It's definitely not something you can just pick up very easily. Another thing is with the VouZou is you can, if you VouZou against a wall and flick away, you can get something that looks like a MouZou or a Slither, right? Except it's a lot more powerful. There we go. Another thing with the VouZou is you don't actually have to be running to do it. You can do it from a standstill. That one kind of glitched out. But yeah, you can do it from a standstill, and that also works. Although I do think running is a little easier to do it. But yeah, whoops. You can also kill yourself if you go too fast and hit a wall. Okay, on to some of the hardest mechanics, I guess. We have the Slither Chain. Now, this mechanic really doesn't have a name by the community. I just call it Slither Chain because you're basically mixing a Slither or a MouZou, same thing, into a RouZou. And you can chain as many RouZous as you want after, but right here I'll demonstrate. I will Slither off of this and RouZou off of that, and this should give me a really powerful RouZou off of that blue box. Yeah. So the mechanic, if you know how to MouZou, it shouldn't be too hard to understand what's happening. It's just chaining a MouZou, so this, into a RouZou or multiple RouZous further down the road, and it basically gives you really powerful RouZous. Okay, now onto what I consider to be the most difficult Battlefield 4 movement mechanic is the VouZou Slither Chain, right? So it's like the Slither Chain, it's really similar, except instead of starting with a Slither, you start with a VouZou, which is the medpack one, and this in turn gives you a very powerful initial launch, and because of that powerful initial launch, you can chain together a lot of powerful RouZous afterwards, right? So I'll try to demonstrate it here, but it's not easy. Yeah, so there it is, right? I'll throw in some other gameplay footage I have of VouZou Slither Chains and just Slither Chains in general. Onto more miscellaneous movement techs. These are just kind of quirks of Frostbite, right? First thing these aren't really important. The first thing we have is the ladder launch, right? Just like that. And the way to do this is you need a ladder which is at least partially submerged in water. You see this one is? These, you don't come by these too often, so that's why it's not very useful, but it's you want to sprint, or my control key is my sprint key, so control W, and as soon as I hit the ladder, I press S. That time I didn't get it. It's kind of hard to get. I only get it like 1 to 5 times, but yeah. It's just a timing thing. You can launch up pretty high, but yeah. Another misc movement tech that a lot of people don't really know of is just finding big slopes. I found one of these mountain maps, but they're on any map, and just sliding down and knowing when to actually jump so you can keep a lot of your speed. That one kind of sucked, but you see I'm keeping a lot of speed, right? Jumping to keep it all. I've seen a lot of people not doing this, but it's really handy. So another misc movement tech is the Mario jump. To do this, you either have to put a med pack on top of the rail or beside it like this. So basically just line up with it, stay parallel, jump, and you should get a big jump like that. Now for the last miscellaneous movement tech, this one's kind of an honorable mention, but it is the double jump. I saw a video posted around 6 years ago showing someone doing it consistently. You get a lot by accident, it happens a lot by accident, but I just don't think it's possible to get it consistent. I think DICE must have patched something, because I've spoken to a lot of people and no one knows how to get it consistently. But here's a few clips of me getting it accidentally. Okay, that's it for the Battlefield movement video. I don't think I'm missing anything, but if I am, please tell me. Shout out to Dolanofficial and Kiyoushii for helping me record the clips, and that's it.
Yeah, if they made it like a percentage of your year. Look at that nonsense. Did you see that?